Ren, welcome back to this video series about Ren, the Ren philosophical language. This is the fifth installment and will focus entirely on a unique and sometimes confusing aspect of the language, indexing and the variable syllable. Let's get started. Now, if you've been following these lessons and delved into the dictionary to maybe try writing or just to see what there are in terms of words that already exist, you'll have noticed that almost all of the words in the Ren language are broken up with a hyphen. I've got a few examples for you up on the presentation here, one of each category. Now, these categories have no grammatical meaning whatsoever. You don't need to remember them. They just refer to the three places that this hyphen can be found. Position 0 has it at the beginning of the word before any consonants, so it forms the first syllable by itself. Position 1 has it after the first consonant, forming the first syllable along with an onset, and position 2 has it in the second syllable. These positions have tendencies as to in what words they're in, which you can read about here on the slide, as it can help you remember, but really it's just something that you have to recall when studying each new word. But of course, we want to find out just what on earth this hyphen is. People have asked me, you just spent 20 minutes talking about how to pronounce Ren words, but what is this hyphen and how do I pronounce it? And the answer is, the hyphen is not a letter. The hyphen is not a sound. It is there to stand in place of a sound. Specifically, it stands in place of a vowel sound. And in Ren, it is referred to as patra frig, an empty letter. The hyphen gets replaced with a pharyngalized syllable, ah, ich, oh, or or a diphthong, ia, you, yo, oa, and au. Now, it is very important to get your head around what it is I'm about to tell you, as this is the first thing about the Ren language that is simultaneously very simple and potentially confusing. None of these vowels have any inherent meaning. They are just a way of indexing something in the dialogue. Now, I want to teach you what it looks like when we apply these, but first, there are two exceptions to this, two exceptions to the rule that these vowels don't have any inherent meaning, and there are two vowels that actually do. The first is tej, the A sound. If you use this vowel as your variable syllable to replace the hyphen, it is a statement that the word is an application explicitly to the non-dual Ren, the sacred, the indivisible, the eternal. The second exception is the schwa, written in the Roman characters as just the regular E, and it indicates that it applies to something that is inanimate, or otherwise something that we just don't care to identify. Here we have some examples. I've taken three words, each with the variable syllable in different positions, with different onsets, to show you how the vowels can look when applied. I'd like to draw your attention to a few things. The first is that if you look at Trite, the Ren script versions, you'll notice that a word, no matter which variable syllable it takes, will always be the same width. It will have the same number of characters, even if the transliteration doesn't necessarily look like it. Have a look at the very last example, adna. Even though it contains only two syllables, while the others contain three, like adina, the word itself is the same width. You might also notice that when I say there were two words, adna, adena, they take about the same amount of time to say. This is because the Ren is more mora-timed. Basically, the d in there takes up the same amount of time whether it contains a vowel or not, and that's why it's written that way. Second, have a look at the middle example, the position 1. In that beginning E sound actually sort of stands in as a consonant even though it's a vowel. This is fairly common in the Ren with this particular sound, and when it precedes the variable syllable, that hyphen, then the variable syllable stands on its own when written. Pay particular attention to the last one with the schwa, and notice that It's still written there. This is the only time that I can think of when you actually write the schwa like this in the middle of a word. Now, the pronunciation of these is a little strange, but basically the initial I makes a sort of Y sound. I'll pronounce each of these for you. Yah, yih, yoh, yul, yah, yul, yul, yol, yal, yel, yil. So after all this showing you how to apply and write the variable syllable, I kind of glazed over exactly what it means, what it does in the language, what's its function. I've used the word apply, that the variable syllable is used to apply the word to someone or to something. In English, when we want to give a pronoun as the subject of a sentence, we outright say it. I walk, you walk, she walks, they walk, we all walk. This is a very what we call analytical way of marking a subject. There are some languages that sort of mash the subject in with the verb. For example, in Latin, we have the root ambul for walk, but that never stands on its own. We have ambulo for I walk, or ambulat for he walks, and so forth. Now this is more like what Hyphen does, but you might remember Hyphen doesn't actually have pronouns. It doesn't make distinctions at all between animates. There is no I or you or he or she that's walking. There is just someone, something, some instance or image of Ren, the non-dual idea of Ren. All we can say is, this Ren is walking, as opposed to that Ren is walking, or that other instance of Ren is walking. And that's all these variable syllables are doing. Let's look at the simple examples in this slide. The first sentence is sere, it walks. This can mean that something inanimate is walking, like maybe a toy. It can also mean, though, that something animate is walking, but we don't really care to identify it. This happens fairly often, especially if it's just a single statement with just one thing you're talking about. If you wanted to tell your friend who's Ren that you're going for a walk, you might just say sere and leave it at that. But now, in the second, we have sor, which means that there's definitely someone that's alive who is walking, and now we've given them a variable syllable so that we can keep referring to the same individual. It could also be a group of people, a group of individuals. It could easily just mean an entire 6th grade class is out walking right now. And we didn't have to use oa as our variable syllable. It would have the exact same meaning with any of the other 8 diphthongs or pharyngalized vowels that we listed. We just happened to choose this one, and now oa is what we're using to refer to this individual or group. So when we then say hasoat, we mean specifically that this individual or group, this instance of Ren, is tired. And in the third example, when we say kohna, aha, now suddenly we have another variable syllable, oh. This means that it's someone else, that this can mean somebody different than the Ren who was walking that we were talking about before and is now tired. Kohna, someone is singing. And while it doesn't necessarily have to be, we're probably talking about somebody else than when we were before. Once again, it didn't have to be oh, just so long as it's any of the other 9 possible variable syllables that isn't oa. I included one more part of this example to show you how it works for nouns. When you put a variable syllable in the noun, its application is associating that instance of Ren with that noun. In the Ren language, we never equate living things with non-living things, so we can reliably translate this as ownership. So, vuchshar can mean that this Ren has an idea, or as a statement, this is the Ren's idea. In a sentence, say if we said vuchshar mathir, we can say that this Ren's idea is interesting. This Ren has an interesting idea. There's one more way to complicate all of this though. Take a deep breath. Are you ready? Okay. Whenever we're applying a variable syllable, we're operating to some extent in duality. We're doing our best to say that everything is a facet of Ren, but we're still looking at one specific facet, one instance which we see as separate in some way from other instances. And we need to do this to some extent for communication to work. But if we wish to rectify this, we can use that other variable syllable, the tej. I can say ser, and that means Ren walks. Ren, the non-dual, the eternal, that which is all things, that which is beyond all things, that to which all words are an application, and that which no words can describe. The non-dual Ren is walking. I can even use this in a noun if I say fechar. Not only does the non-dual Ren have an idea, the non-dual Ren is the idea. No matter what word we use this in, it will always be accurate. I hope this lesson has been a bit enlightening, has cleared up some questions. This is our first real foray into Ren morphology, and we're actually well on our way to building sentences of multiple words. We now actually have a Discord server where you can jump in, ask questions, meet with others engaged in the philosophy, and study the language together. I'll put the link to that in the description, and I'll gladly answer questions wherever they're posted. As ever, thank you for listening, watching, and I wish you all the best on your journey.